Welcome to the Alchemy of Truth podcast. Alchemy, the magic and philosophy that potentiates change in the universe, meets truth. What is real? Hard facts, science, reality itself, and risk. It is time that we, as humans, change the fundamentals of how we engage with the world.
We're starting this with a deep conviction that the pursuit of truth will bring clarity to our world. How do we interpret the past? How do we understand the present? How do we see truths in our future? What risks are we oblivious to? And what truths are we not allowed to say?
We are here to discuss it all, with an aim towards deep truth and true confrontation of reality. Life is a journey. Let's take to the path and live in truth and wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, in skydiving and base jumping, you have a very high amount of agency because you want to live. All right?
Yeah.
That's just not true of life. That's just not true of the institutions we build. That's just not true of the society we built because there is no one person who holds out. There is no one person who owns the outcome. There's a lot of agency that could have been had that isn't being had.
Yes, this is back to that draining of vigor that we mentioned earlier at the start about the modern world lacks some kind of fundamental vigor. Like we don't have that let's rebuild the world and make it awesome energy that we had at the end of World War II.
Absolutely.
For example. And that's exactly the kind of thing. There aren't a lot of high agency individuals. You know, this is kind of a flaw of the concept of modern rationality that goes back to that two forms of denial conversation, where it's kind of like reality is I need to be perfectly emotionally stable to be rational. And so to achieve that type of rationality, I have to be unwilling to accept truths that emotionally energize me, which is how you get that polarity. It's nothing, so it doesn't need to be emotionally energizing, or it's so much that I can do nothing, therefore it's not emotionally energizing. It's bad and we can do something as emotionally energizing. That is destabilizing to the egoic concept of rationality. And that fear of being irrational and being emotional means that people make incredibly irrational decisions about what their worldview is going to be to manage their emotional responses. Instead of, I will accept reality in whatever form it comes and react to it in the most intellectually solid way that I can, while also bringing my full being to bear on that on an emotional level. That's true rationality. That's true stoicism, to kind of go back to the deeper origins of like what rationality is. You know, it's kind of this Stoic concept from Marcus Aurelius. It's been misinterpreted to be non-emotional. It's not that. It's to be in possession of yourself at all times. And that possession means that when your emotions come forward, you are directly interacting with those emotions instead of the emotion controlling you from behind the scenes, or you like managing the way that you see the world to manage those emotions. It's the world will come to me, it will pass through me, my emotions will come up, and then those emotions will be brought into me and my action, but will not control me in my action. I am in control of my action. And so my emotions become fuel for my action. My emotions become guidance for my action, but they aren't the controlling factor. I, the agent, I, the self, I, the consciousness, the actor in the world, am the one who makes the final decision. And that's true freedom. And that's the concept of Stoicism, restructured to make it more easy to understand. At least that's how I've restructured it in my mind to make it make sense to me.
So what you're saying is separate your beliefs from the emotions you're currently experiencing, and any emotions that you're experiencing based on stimulus that's coming at you from the world, but do so in a manner that your emotions do not affect the outcome. You're stoic. Your beliefs are as close to the truth as they possibly can be, and your emotions just are. They're incidental. They are.
I think it's a little deeper than that. You want your emotion to be as full as possible, because emotion, like Emotions exist to motivate us to action and to create a lens for decision making, structured so that they avoid risks. That can go overboard where the risk that you are aware of, because what you point your lens at is what you see, will cause you to run directly for the cliff because you don't see it. And so that's kind of hysteria, to frame that in one way, right? Or that's like panic in like a, if hysteria is like you just do random crazy things, then a step down from that would be like modern concept of panic, which I've mentioned, which is sort of you run straight for a cliff because you don't see it because you're afraid of the thing that you do see that's chasing you. And then a step down from that is I'm going to look at everything that I can see in the world with my lens of fear so that I can manage all of the risks that I might encounter that I can see. And then I will also try and forecast my mind into the future to predict what risks I might encounter that I can't see until they arrive, and also do my best to manage those through my lens of fear. And then you bring in your next lens and you're like, this is my lens of courage. What of these risks do I need to face to overcome? And then I will do that regardless of the fear. And then you bring in the next phase, which is as a rational agent in the world who is conscious, who is driven by my experience of the universe. How do I do this in a way that is compassionate to all other beings that have that same kind of conscious experience of the universe? Because we are all in the creation of the future together, and the good of the universe is not determined. It is up to consciousness to decide the good of the universe, and you kind of go from there. And that's, you build this stack of risk management that is deeply built from emotion up to rationality and into consciousness. And all of it is concerted towards the good. And that good is layered from the microorganism of the self to the macrocosm of the universe.
So what I'm hearing is emotions are the pathways of agency.
Yes, exactly.
Right? You plug into your emotions so you can shape your environment, your tribe.
Yes. And much of like the deep philosophy, like the Eastern philosophy of Buddhism and Stoicism from Western philosophy, that like the idea of this stuff, detachment and self-control, right? These ideas are about bringing the emotion in front of the self. It's not about killing the emotion. It's about bringing it in front of the self, right? So if you have emotion behind you that you're not fully aware of, that's driving you, that motion is in control of you, and you aren't in control of that emotion. So you want to bring it in front of you, you can see it and hold it. And if you can hold your emotion in your hands metaphorically, but you'll get a feeling where you feel like holding that emotion and you're in control of that emotion. And that emotion, then you can like you can broadcast that out from yourself and then follow it. Instead of it pushing you, you follow it. And that's a very different experience. And then you can drop that emotion at any time. If you need to drop it, if you see that there's more to the world that you need to engage with than that emotion, then you can drop that emotion in an instant, and you don't die inside when you do that. That's the non-attachment. That's in Stoicism, that's the idea of, it's kind of a different way of framing impermanence from a Buddhist perspective. But the core of that is that you aren't bound to this because it's not pushing you. So if you get rid of it, if you're being pushed by something, you have to move away to get out of its way. So you have to cut yourself away from this thing. And that's a very painful process. Whereas if holding something and dropping it, you're kind of relieving yourself of a burden. And so you don't have that same like painful process of getting away. That is kind of the framing that I think makes sense. I'm a little bit just kind of like throwing out ideas, but I've thought about this deep enough that I'm happy with the way that I think about it on a personal level, and hopefully it's interesting to other people.
Yeah, it is interesting.